สวัสดีครับอาจารย์ครับ
People just joining now.
Good morning
สวัสดีค่ะ
Morning, Alberto. Or good evening, Alberto. Good evening, as the case may be.
Good morning.
Hello Hung, Alberto and Jan. We need to leave a little early today because Jonathan's family are visiting. So if we suddenly disappear, everyone will know why. Shall we start now?
Yes, please.
Anything you'd like to start with, Anne or Alberto or Hang? Otherwise, I'll start. This morning after our very early swim, I was having a chat with the son of one of my swimmer friends, and he's actually a very strong swimmer too. He's only 11 years old. And I asked him what he was doing for the day. And then he turned around and he said, "And what are you doing for the day?" And I said, "Well, after our swim, we're having a little breakfast, and then the next thing we have is a Buddhist Zoom discussion." And I was going to go on to talk about Jonathan's family visiting. And usually when I mention to people we're having a Buddhist Zoom discussion, there's silence and they wait for the next interesting topic. But he said, "Oh, that's so interesting. I know a little bit about Buddhism from watching The Simpsons on TV because one of the Simpsons is a Buddhist." And he said, "Oh, can you tell me a little bit more about Buddhism? Is it about being kind to people?" And I thought, well, that was quite good. I said, "Yes, it is about being kind. And it's also about understanding more about life at the present moment." He's 11 years old. And he started to think about this. And he asked me one or two questions about life. And it was really a good little discussion. And then he said, "Can I ask another question?" Yes. "If it's all about this moment, why do I have to learn about history in school?" And this was a quite difficult question. And then after that, another question is, I've got to do a futuristic project at school, all about what will happen in the future. But why do we have to do projects like this? So I took him to some other friends and I said, "Well, can you help me answer these questions?" And we ended up having quite a chat about Buddhism. And one of them said, "Oh, well, if you don't learn anything about history, how will you know how to make a surfboard in the beach?" And we talked about the future and the dreams and the fantasies, but how there's going to be thinking about the future anyway. So one might as well learn about other people's ideas. But anyway, it was quite interesting. And then one of them said, "Oh, well, and actually Buddhists do talk about the future because they talk about reincarnation." So, so then I started talking a little bit about how, well, actually, is there anyone to be reincarnated? So we actually ended up with quite a deep discussion. But my question for all of you is, if a 11-year-old kid says, "Well, if life is just about the present moment, why do I have to study history in school? And why do I have to do futuristic projects? In other words, why do I have to go to school at all?" And how would you answer? Tom, I'm sure you would have ideas about this.
I have to think about it, but I don't think learning, I can't believe that learning history would hurt. And it would make you think about other people's actions. And I think that is useful.
And maybe we could say it's a little bit like reading about Jatakas. This is about history, but the point is, in the end, it's not the details that matter at all, but it's actually about life now.
I think my answer would be that when he says, why do we have to learn about history? History is something that is valued conventionally by the conventional world. And it's different from the study of Buddhism, which is about things that are absolutes, that don't rely on knowledge of events in the past or having special skills. So they are different domains, as it were. And one does not, so that's all. There's a lot of things that are valued conventionally, which have no specific value in terms of the Dhamma, but we still acknowledge the conventional values of the society in which we live. When you think about the things you could think about or study, and you know you're not going to think about Dhamma all the time, what's more useful? Well, I suppose if you ask someone who had renounced the household life, they would say, you don't have to think about Dhamma as such. If we define Dhamma as being the essence, just the essence of the Buddha's teaching, that is the development of insight. But one still thinks about what is kusala and akusala, because that's beneficial. That's what's beneficial or detrimental to oneself and others.
And we could say that even when watching the news or reading the newspaper or reading the history books, it's still, we can learn, it's still about different truths, different habits, killing, stealing, being honest, clinging to power, and so on. So it's still about daily life now, like as Ujjan said in one of the discussions now, it is the Jataka that is being made, different habits, the different accumulations that are building up to be the history of tomorrow. And how would you answer, Anne? Any comments?
I think as interested in the Dhamma as one is, it's wonderful. It's got a lot of benefits. It's really, the ultimate goal. However, one is living in the conventional world and needs to be able to operate in it. So that entails thinking about things that aren't necessarily the Dhamma while one goes about one's life.
Yes, perhaps when I speak to him next time, which will probably be tomorrow, I can begin to introduce the distinction between the conventional world and absolute world. Not easy, with an 11-year-old kid, but just begin to make some comments and see how it goes.
Not easy with adults either.
Maybe a bit more difficult with adults because they're set in their ways and set in their beliefs, and children aren't quite there yet.
But I think talking about the conventional world or society and the absolute world, what is real at the present moment, is a good way to lead into the difference between reality and concepts, which if you start off by trying to explain realities versus concepts, it's very difficult for the other person to grasp. But if one comes at it via conventional values or ideas and absolutes, then maybe it can be introduced at some point.
Jan, would you like to add any comments to the discussion?
I think that there was a king in history, so we can ask him, is there a king now? And what's the answer? Suppose you're that boy. Is
That
that
boy would answer yes.
okay? Where's the king now? You
Sitting on his throne.
right at moment of feeling talking, is there a king sitting on the throne? Let him learn about the truth of what is there, even what is a moment. Because without understanding the truth, no one can say anything at all. Without that which arises and experience the object and appear when it's there, how can there be any king or anyone's history? Nothing at all. So let him learn to think about the truth. Even just very simple question. Is there now? Is it a moment? And what is meant by a moment? If there's nothing at all, can there be the idea of moment? Or even can there be moment when there's nothing at all? So ask him to consider by himself what is so deep about right now. Thinking about a king, there's no king right now. So what is that which thinks? And so on. Little by little. Understand from the very beginning about now. What's it? And what is there now? Or nothing at all now, and so on. So he can understand what is there in truth very gradually, understanding what's true right now. What is true right now? That can be the question for him to think about little by little and see what the answer is, to know how much he understood about what he learned.
Yes, when one of the friends mentioned about, oh, there is reincarnation, and I said, well, what is it that is reincarnation, and what about now? For example, is it an eye that sees now, a person that hears now? The friend said, well, I can appreciate that it's just thinking. And but the child, it was like it was too much for him, but for the other people. So it depends who can appreciate the point and consider how much at this time. And it can be so helpful for anyone, like you say, to be questioned and begin to consider for the first time that what we take for someone or a person is actually just a figment of the imagination. So when asked how there can be reincarnation if there is no person, and what is it that continues on, actually it's just like this moment. Anyway, I will, with the child, I will try to continue the discussion little bit, just a little bit, in a light, easy manner. Each day is better than too much and someone losing interest. And the language is very important. It has to be the language that the child in this case, can follow or relate to. And the examples have to be ones that the person can understand.
something to think about while he swims.
Yes. Like I said, oh, when you swim and there are the waves and the fish, is it just like now thinking about the waves and the fish? Is it just thinking now? Because where are the fish? Can they be seen? Can they be touched? Or is it just thinking at this moment when we're chatting? So a little, just a little. And another topic to discuss a little bit more. This child, he's won lots of prizes, lots of awards. He's going to be a very strong swimmer. He's already very fast. He's very, very competitive, very disciplined. So I can chat to him a little bit more about, okay, it's fine to enter competitions and to increase your speed and so on, but what about the expectations and disappointments? What about when you don't beat the others? Are you glad for them or are you upset? Are there expectations? Because then there will be disappointments. So many little topics that are relevant to his daily life to discuss a little bit more. Nopadon, do you have any comments? I saw you were highlighted, your name was highlighted.
I have no comment. I just only listen. Okay.
But it was interesting this morning because after the swim, I had many conversations with many people, but the most useful one, the most interesting one was with the 11-year-old kid, and said sometimes easier to speak to children than to adults. How about you, Hung? Do you have any comments or anything you would like to bring up today?
I think adults have a lot of preconceptions about Buddhism too. So you have to get over those so they could think again about what might be real.
They're very afraid of having someone's trip put on them or hearing about something which they think is a religion, or so one has to go very carefully, as we've discussed before, when there is some interest rather than just trying to tell anyone anything.
Is Buddhism a religion?
Of course, it's not a religion, it's an understanding of the truth of life. No, it's not. Most people have no interest to hear more. But that's all right too. Sometimes one has to just bring up comments in another way. And sometimes it's one's example too that people learn about. I lost my swim cap in the surf the other day and someone found it. And people came up and said, oh, this is your cap because you're a good Buddhist. So this is the result of your karma. So just little ideas to show support, even though they're not really interested to discuss more or learn a little bit more about what karma really is and so on.
Sarah, in last week's discussion, you were talking at one point, it was an example, for instance, when we smile or are friendly, that there are so many moments involved, like countless moments involved. And this is the case all day long. All day long. It really points to the intricacy and the task of understanding. Yeah, I found that comment very useful, because I know it's moment to moment, and we've talked about the moments before, but yes, connecting.
How are you? What are the cheetahs when saying how are you with a nice
Yes.
smile, and how no one can tell from the outer appearance. Only Panya can know. And I think we also talked about how, as understanding grows, it conditions more kusala, more consideration of the other, more kindness, but only with the sincerity and satya parami, which we often discuss, with understanding, to really be honest to the truth. Otherwise, we just assume when we're being friendly or someone is being friendly that it's all good, because it's pleasant and everyone likes to be with someone who is friendly. But truthfully, most of the time, the friendliness is with attachment, friendly to these ones because they're our friends or family. But what about friendliness to anyone? What about to the one who's picking a fight in the street, or the aggressor in the war, or anyone at all that one comes across, or when one's watching TV, friendly attitude to anyone, no matter how they behave, more understanding. So I think that the understanding is really important, and the being truthful to the cheetah now, not just assuming for others or ourselves that it must be kusala because it's friendly and pleasant, one cheetah at a time.
And it definitely points to how little understanding there is, even though one listens and discusses and considers. There's such a huge difference between that and actually the understanding that will realize moments, not all the time, but has the capability of understanding not individual moments, but understanding realities that are arising and falling away all the time, because most of our lives are a big story.
Yes, I mentioned in the discussion this morning with the friends on the beach after the discussion with the child that we understand so well when we wake up about dreams and fantasies, but even now, talking about the fish in the sea and the waves and our plans, our ideas, and so on. Actually, we live in this fantasy world most of the time, most of the day, imagining what others' cheetahs are, imagining what is seen and heard and smelled and tasted and touched all day long. Dreaming about the last meal or the next meal or the last encounter or the next counter. Like even now when I talk about the conversation with the friends, dreaming about the different friends and the 11-year-old boy. It's just thinking now, seeing now, hearing now, thinking with attachment most of the time, thinking of ignorance occasionally, thinking with kusala cheetahs. Alberto, I don't know if you remember, but one time, a very, very long time ago, you said to me, I think we were in Gangrajan, and you said, oh, Ajahn is so amazing. She has metta all the time. And I said, are you sure it's all the time? How can we know? Because what about at moments of seeing and hearing? What about at moments of attachment and ignorance? So it can never be all the time. We can conventionally say, oh, this one has a lot of metta, Ajahn has a lot more metta, much more than others. But it can never be all the time. It can only ever be for a moment and then gone. Pleasant feeling with clinging, pleasant feeling with attachment. How are you with kusala or akusala, with kindness or with attachment? Different moments. So we make many assumptions, but actually the truthfulness, the more truthfulness of the reality now, the more understanding there is that it's actually like this for everyone. Moments of seeing and hearing, no metta. Moments of ignorance, no metta. So the moments of goodness are so much fewer than the moments of akusala. And even though the goodness develops with understanding, still it can never be metta all the time. But I know you were just speaking conventionally. Do you have any comments, Alberto, on any of these topics?
Yeah, I remember I was comparing, I think I was just comparing Ajahn metta with my own or something like that. Just the different magnitude of the reality. For me, it was like almost non-existent. But for Ajahn was much more developed and so on and so forth. Different levels of metta.
And what about when comparing, what kind of citas are they that compare about hers and mine, and thinking about how one has so little compared to the others? What kind of citas?
Can also be a bit truthful to the truth and acknowledge one's akusala and the other's kusala.
And any mana when thinking about how the other has much more kusala and I have much less, or the other has much more metta.
Also a bit of admiration as well, a bit of
and I have
maybe a bit of envy as well.
Because it's about me, yes.
Yeah, so many different moments of it's impossible to list them all and differentiate in
different moments, like I know last time you were mentioned about mudita, so can be moments of mudita and amodana, appreciating the other's kusala, but so quickly the moments of mana can come in. Well, mine is not so much, so then it's about me and my importance again. So just like in the example of the kindness, different moments, the joy, the mudita is just for a moment, and then clinging to this one, clinging to oneself, to one's lack of understanding comes in. Different realities, different moments. And all dhammas know her, know me, know this one, know that one. Just different dhammas arising and falling away. I thought it was that just reminds me, it was a good point that when you were asking about mudita and karuna and how There seems to be more mudita, not so much karuna, and you talked about it for some time. And Ajahn's comment, if I recall, was these are just the words. It's not the understanding of the Dhamma now. At the moment of when mudita appears, there can be understanding of mudita. At the moment when karuna appears, true sympathy, not attachment, not unpleasant feeling, there can be understanding only then of the characteristic. At the moment when mana appears, only then can there be understanding.
The difference between pariyati and patipati and pativeda is we can just talk about the reality. But the direct understanding, it's a completely different level of anya.
And when it is just words, I think the point is there may not be any understanding, because if it's not related to what appears, can be known now, even at the pariyati level, then it can just be thinking about the words, the terms, but it's not the understanding. Again, only the panya can know at this moment or that moment. But if it's not any understanding about what life is now, if it's just thinking or dreaming about the karuna at another time, is it really even pariyati understanding at that moment? I think that was the point. So even the beginning of understanding, even the pariyati understanding, has to be about life at this moment. Let's see if Ajahn would like to add more on that topic or any other. Sorry, were you about to say something, Alberto? Yes.
No, yeah. I think a good idea if Ajahn add something on any topic.
No matter what we are talking about, the point is to understand the truth. No one there at all. It's not I who is such and such comparing or whatever is there. Otherwise, the I clings to the context of the word only. What does it mean? What is there? Mudita or Samma Ashiva and so on. It's there in life already, in the moment when it is conditioned to arise, unknown at all. That's why we learn to understand no matter what in there. It's just that which arises and experiences an object. Otherwise, there's nothing appear at all. No matter what we are talking about, it's there unknown until it's known. From hearing, considering.
We're leaving you. There's a little difficulty.
Is it not clear, the sound, or what?
It's very clear. I can hear you very clear, Tana Jankup.
Sorry, I think it's my connection that has a problem. Carry on, Ajahn.
That's why what are there in life can be learned to understand the truth of it very gradually, from just beginning to listen carefully and understand that the reality, no matter what we are talking about, is so very subtle. Because, for example, we talk about seeing. It seems like no one has doubt about it, but in truth, no one knows seeing at all. Otherwise, there can be the understanding of the moment when there is not seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, but it's there, the reality which experiences the object, but the object is not known. But the reality which experiences the object is there, while the object is not known. To understand the truth, when it continues on and on and on by conditions, then moment of seeing. So it's that which experiences the unknown object, experience that which is seen, and then going away, all the seeing and what are there from moment to moment. And this is to be learned in life, the study of Dhamma, to understand at the moment as well. At moment of being angry, see, a reality different from sight and sound is there. It gets angry with something seen or heard and so on, but it's not known as not I or anything at all. It's just a reality. That's why we learn about all kinds of dhammas, just to know it when it's there, or begin to attend to the characteristic which is there as it is, only that and then gone. That's why before there can be the attention to the characteristic of any reality right now, it needs more and more understanding of non-self, the reality which is there as it is. Otherwise, it is just only the idea about it's not me, it's just that and that and that, seeing, hearing, smelling, but it's still I who is thinking about what is there, little by little. That's why the reality is so subtle, because it's conditioned to arise. No one can make it arise at all. No expectation what would be next. Just learn to understand, no matter when and where, sleeping, drinking, talking, all adhamas. Each moment is real, and what is there has to be the reality which experiences the object right then and then gone, so very quickly. So how can it be known about its arising and its falling away? But the different characteristic of realities in a day begin to be known as it's just a moment, or it is just a reality. When will there be such understanding? Until right understanding about realities we learned and thought about carefully, condition the moment of beginning to just think about it in the beginning, and then it keep on develop secretly, unknowingly, to be moment of without any understanding. There can never be such moment. The moment of direct understanding with direct awareness of what is that just right now. By conditions, that is the subtlety of the path of what it develops until it's there appearing to be different from just intellectual understanding. Because it's not just understanding that hardness is conditioned to appear. At that moment, when there's no attention to the characteristic of hardness, how can there be such even understanding the nature of hardness to be known that when it's there, nothing is appearing together at all. Only hardness is there. But now, there can be moments of experiencing hardness, but there are also other realities appear together, like at moment of touching, hardness is there. There's also seeing and thinking and so on, by conditions. So very quickly, anytime, until right understanding begin to understand from the very beginning, just understand the difference between that which experiences and that which cannot experience. Any moment of touching, hearing, smelling, tasting, whatever is there can be known. Attachment at moment of strong attachment, like it so much more than other things, different levels of attachment. Just learn to understand the truth of what is there, to be conditioned for right understanding, to develop more when there is more attention to the characteristic which is right there now. So we talk about Cetasikas and Citta to understand that no matter it's the moment of seeing or the moment of liking or disliking, they are all Dhamma, different Dhammas, not the same at all, never be the same. What is now appearing, gone forever, never to return. So what we take for life is no understanding of what is there, which experiences, for example, seeing right now. No one there at all. But it's the moment of experiencing. So the idea or the feeling or the I is there. Naturally, unknowingly, who else? That's why learn to understand the truth from hearing, considering, to condition the moment of understanding what is there in life, no matter when, even right now. So we just learn about all kinds of dhammas to understand that they are different, but no wish to understand them thoroughly because they do not appear. But when we know the difference from learning about each different reality, whatever is there can be known as it is, no word at all. But if it's now we try so hard to know it, it's just thinking about it, not the moment of attending to the characteristic which one would like so much to understand because of anothernness. And that is the only way to let go the idea of self or the clinging to that with ignorance as usual. So very gradually, that it doesn't matter how long it will develop until it can be that moment directly understanding what is there that we have learned from books. It's there now, no matter what we learn, but it's not time to realize the truth. But without understanding the anotherness of all kinds of Dhamma, how can there be moment of understanding the nature of that, which cannot be taken for anything at all? For example, while one is swimming, the idea swimming is there, but is there any citta, sees, or hears, or touch? Unknown. Because the idea of I am swimming, I at moment of seeing, I at moment of thinking, I at moment of touching, see, all 6 services in life, unknown because of ignorance and the idea of self. I see, so I swim, or I do, or whatever is there, all I is there at moment of whatever experiencing. Reality arises and falls away. That's right, learning to let go the clinging, the ignorance, and the idea of self. Gradually, that this is only intellectual understanding because we are learning about seeing and then seeing right now, but seeing does not appear to be known as only seeing is there, nothing else. No word to say seeing, or no word to say it's that which experiencing an object, unknown object. before seeing. Just learn to understand the point of listening to the details of the realities, the subtlety of realities, and this is the path. Without understanding the point of listening, how can it let go? What is there as something as before? So it begins to be attending to hardness or anything, depending on conditions. Before there's no attention to any reality at all. Just take it for something or the story, going somewhere, seeing somewhere, and so on, swimming, drinking, and so on. But in truth, what is there in a moment is not there at all. All gone instantly, never to return. Sunyata. That's why the development of understanding is so very, very subtle. At any moment of understanding the truth, it is the development, so very gradually to let go what is taken as something from life to life. Eons and eons ago, and this life is a proof. No understanding of that which appears if there's no hearing, listening carefully, considering carefully to be truthful to the truth. It cannot be anything. It's only that which is conditioned to arise to experience an object. That's all. And learn about it. Conditions for whatever arises. To understand that no one at all. There are conditions for whatever arises, not just only one condition. The more understanding of the truth, the more it gradually, secretly letting go the understanding or the wrong understanding of self. So at the moment, trying to find out about the Samma Ajiva or Mudita, at that moment, no understanding of that which arises at experience by thinking just about what is there as object, no understanding of that which thinks. And the point is to understand the moment of thinking, seeing, hearing, smelling, or just thinking about, to try to understand that which is there but unknown at all. For example, metta, adosa, see, at moment being friendly, no dosa, no unpleasant feeling. That's why even feeling is very, very difficult, because at moment of seeing someone in need, what is the citta at that moment? Be friendly or so sad. How come for that person to be so needy and so on? And the feeling is there from moment to moment by conditions. If it's not known, it's I. That's why the accumulation, the great accumulation of ignorance and attachment and all kinds of akusala have conditions to arise more than other moments of kusala. That's why the kusala moment needs more cetasika to arise, to condition the arising of kusala moment, and so on. Just learn about what is there to have less attachment and more understanding, because only understanding can let go the idea of self or attachment so strong to such and such object. So this is the life which is so very precious, to understand the truth And understanding is so subtle. The understanding of the subtleness of reality, let go, wishing to understand each other or to experience the truth directly, because all depends on conditions. And that moment of understanding all depends on condition. Let go. The idea of self tries so hard to find out this or that when there's no condition to know it yet. Is this life at any moment, right now? At moment of thinking about swimming, what is that which thinks? If there's no understanding at moment of swimming, how can there be the understanding? All depends on condition. When they are conditioned to understand what is there while one is swimming, by conditions, no expectation, the unnothingness appear to be known little by little until more and more and more and more at moment of understanding the truth. Otherwise, it just dream around, experience something like we thought about Nibbana and so on, but no understanding. How can it be? By ignorance to take this and that for something like Nibbana and so on. So, right understanding is not anyone, it's a reality which arises and understands because it heard a lot, developed on and on enough to understand right now what is there. Without intellectual understanding, there's no condition for patipati to arise at all. And patipati begins so very little, the moment of direct understanding and direct awareness, so short, but it's different from moment of hearing, listening, considering the truth of what is there, because it directly, instantly understand what is there by conditions, just one reality at a time. And Panya knows what's the point of listening to the truth and be truthful to whatever is there as it is, more or less by conditions. And that is the letting go, the subtle path leading to realize the truth, the Ariya Satya, the first noble truth. The more understanding of the truth, the more condition for letting go any wish or expectation, because what is there is not known yet. How can there be moment of realizing the truth? Because the truth is right now.
Ajahn, letting go of the self, it's also letting go of thinking about oneself, of thinking, being always concerned about one's own thoughts and ideas. which we which we think even if it's about Dhamma, it's I'm thinking about Dhamma. It's it's like my understanding, my thinking about the truth. That's not the it doesn't let go of the idea of self. Doesn't let go of the the importance that one has about oneself, what and his idea or about everything. It's instantly there is thinking about the self, about me, about my understanding or my doubt or any idea. But it's much deeper than just thinking about the reality. If thinking with the idea of I'm thinking, which is the usual way until we hear about the teachings, till we hear about the anatomies of the event of thinking. So it's really important to listen and to consider what one is hearing. Kapung Kapasan.
All gone, but no understanding. So there is thinking again about other thing instantly. No attention to what is said right now, which is the point of studying carefully to really understand the truth by different levels. Now, there is the understanding that to think about other things, while what thinking is there, gone, 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 gone. Is that true? So just thinking in a moment, no sorry. But when it keeps on and on and on, thinking, 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 no understanding of thinking, because thinking to understand other things. That's why Dhamma is so very subtle. Attachment is so crafty. It lives all the time, from here to there, on and on and on. So Panya has to be wise to the moment, to whatever is there as it is. Otherwise, attachment and ignorance cannot be gradually letting go. Is that true?
Yeah, like now, it's clinging to the words clinging to the.
So there can be the moment of very subtle understanding of what is said, developing from moment to moment until it's just there by conditions. No matter what, all by conditions. Thinking about this and that is conditioned, but right understanding with right awareness can arise to understand what is there at moment of thinking and what is thinking. There's thinking, but that's right understanding thinking.
No right understanding at all.
That's why right understanding develops so very gradually to understand the truth, each level, very subtle attachment or kilesa is there, unknown until it's known. Gradually, because there are so much conditions to arise for attachment and ignorance arise. So great to condition any moment after seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking in a day. And this is where to let go attachment to realize the truth, to attain the Arya Satya. Until so natural or by conditions, no matter it's akusala, right understanding, understand it's conditioned to be such and such moment. It's long way to understand the truth of what is there right now. So close, not far away. The eye is here, the ear, thinking, everything is right here. So very close. No attention to what is there, so close yet. So the word open as you go, just get nearer and nearer to what is there, which is so very close to understand it. Is it very subtle? Even saying it's so close is forgotten.
Instantly. So quickly forgotten.
Instantly. And only Panya can understand that, see? The development of Panya begins to understand. Gradually, time to time, by conditions. So by conditions, so very great that if the understand it thoroughly, firmly, so natural. Just waiting is akusla. See, Panya has to be wise enough to all kinds of reality and begin to see that they are all conditioned dhammas. And that's the Panya which knows nothing can be done. There's no one to do anything, all by condition. The way Dhamma is, conditioned all the time for whatever is there, arising and falling away, non-stop, as long as there are conditions for whatever arises. It has to arise, not by will or expectation.
So it's a long way, but we also know there is no other way. And you have no choice, really. You have to follow it as long as it takes to progress.
So what about learning about every word, understand the meaning, but no understanding of what is there right now? Is that the point of listening to the truth? Not to learn by words or in words, but to understand the nature of what is there as just a conditioned reality. The more understanding of different realities, the more letting go gradually of that object as something or someone or I or mine. So very subtle, against the current, the storm of ignorance and attachment in a day in life, in a day in samsara. So how many eons and eons lives with ignorance and attachment and other accumulation of kusala and akusala. Is that true? Only that? And Panya knows that, not anyone.
John, you're often reminding us that things occur by conditions, or something we say or understand by conditions. Is I find the more that happens, the harder it is to the more that happens, the more there's recognition of the I that wants to do, that thinks it can do, that tries to do. Very, very subtle, but it's there. And you said something a minute ago by, no understanding or, understanding for sure. And other dhammas don't arise by will or expectation. That again is the I, the self, which is so all pervasive. We can more and more realize it more and more, recognize it more and more, just how all pervasive it is, the idea of I can do, I want, I will. When that's clearly wrong understanding. So it's easy to take what you think of as right understanding as a whole, as a concept, and not be unaware of how often it arises from moment to moment, not understanding, the wanting to try, expecting. I realized I probably haven't been very clear or coherent in what I was saying then, but it's really quite unimaginable at this point as to what truly understanding no self could be. And foolishness.
No, please keep going in. I was just going to make a comment. I think what you were saying was very clear. I found it very clear what you were saying, because, and it reminded me what Dhamma just said a moment ago about how crafty attachment is, and wisdom needs to be on to that. Conventionally speaking, the craftiness of attachment, and it is incredibly insidious, and mostly, as you're kind of alluded to, really goes by with ignorance without being noticed. So, I thought you had you were articulating what you said a moment ago was certainly, to me, was very clear, and it was just a reminder about how subtle the Dhamma is, and how crafty attachment is. It's just its nature. It's used to that kind of trickery over millions of lifetimes, and so we think it's very. So we get easily seduced by it in all its guises.
Right, and it's attachment to self, as you say, Sundar. The idea of self.
Well, yeah, that's in the equation, but it's attachment to everything. And I think, as we've spoken to before, self doesn't have to always to be there, as we know, in that sense of wrong view, but there is just attachment in all its faces. But as you said, certainly self can certainly be in the equation.
Sundar, isn't there three kinds of self, like self with wrong view, and self with mana, and the self with lobha? I think even when there is no wrong view, it's and no mana, there's still the idea of self as that the third kind of self, even just with attachment.
Well, as I understand, we just know, as you've just seemed to have alluded to there, Alberto, there can be lobha without ditthi. We know, we are familiar with that. Certainly intellectually, we can know that. And also, there, of course, can arise with ditthi. That was all that I was, when I was speaking a moment ago, what I was alluding to, that it doesn't always have to be the idea of me or self, because, as Ajahn was alluding to, attachment is very crafty, and it sort of seizes upon any object that it likes, and and thereby increases that accumulation we have for liking whatever object appears, or having aversion to it, which of course will mean that there is no wrong view at those moments. But yeah, that's all. Perhaps others might want to add to that.
I think Jonathan alluded to this last week when we were talking about wrong understanding and wrong thinking, the difference between them, and wrong understanding can arise with ditthi or without. I think that's the way it was. And when it's with ditthi, that's the idea of the self, the view of the self, and without that view is not arising. And I'm at loss here to think of examples. Not that examples are the best way to learn anything, but
I think you made a good point there too, and because we can't. Well, just a point that I'd like to make when I was listening to Ajahn a moment ago is that she really helps me to appreciate that very first aspect of Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, beautifully enunciated as the Dhamma. When we hear it, when there is a consideration of it, we begin to see the profundity of it. And I appreciate the way Tanajan expresses Dhamma, because it enables understanding to grow ever so gradually, but it enables understanding to grow. It's not, and then getting to the point that you seem to be making there, and is that there needs to be more than the thinking of it. There always needs to be more than that, because it's not just the words which we hear. We have to consider, or there has to be a careful considering of just what those words are alluding to. Otherwise, there will be obviously different levels of misunderstanding. It's not just in the books. The books can help, certainly. There's no question about that. We have to hear the Dhamma and consider it carefully, but there needs to be that ongoing reflection and consideration that's beyond what we're hearing, which is a condition for the understanding to grow if there is the seeds there already being planted. But if that seed is not there, there'll be continual thinking around these different types of concepts, which will not go towards what wisdom truly is. So it's a very, as Sanajan has mentioned and Sarah and others alluded to, it's very, very subtle, and it takes that very careful consideration of just what appears right now, as Tanajan would always remind us that there are Dhammas appearing, and if there is not that relationship between the present moment and what's being spoken about, then we'll always be forever thinking about these things in ways that are not particularly helpful. Yes, we can appreciate Dhamma at so many different levels, but the level that Tanajan and others remind us of is an aspect of Dhamma that's not normally spoken about, and that's really heard in samsara, and ultimately, of course, was revealed by the Buddha, and Tanajan and others are helping us to begin to appreciate that, the subtlety of it, and how I guess I'm thinking again, how tricky and how crafty Ajahn, I like that word that Ajahn uses, but that it is. It will always find easily an object to latch onto. It's like a contagion. It's very, very easy for attachment to grow, and to grow without being noticed by wisdom, because we think we may know, yes, attachment is the first noble truth, or second noble truth, excuse me, dukkha samudaya. We can know that intellectually, but if there's not that application to what appears at the present moment again and again and again, doesn't have to be, obviously, we know, nothing to do with place or posture. It has to do with understanding, which grows so very delicately and very, 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 very slowly.
Very true, so true, and well articulated, Sundara. The more one considers, or more consideration there is, the more understanding of the amount of ignorance that arises, and the long path towards the letting go. It happens gradually, and yeah.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the words that you've just shared there. Sorry, Ian, is the words that Tana often reminds me of. She calls it Chira Kala Bhavana. The long time devotion, if you like, or cultivation. Chira meaning long, Kala meaning time, and Bhavana referring, of course, to cultivation. So it is a long time cultivation, and it takes incredible patience. And the word you just used there, and I was just thinking about it recently, the word considerate, to consider, actually, the word consider in English means, it's just a word. The word consider is comes from the Latin sedere, and it's to do with the stars, the firmament above. And when you look up at the night sky, you really ponder, but it's pointing to the incredible breadth of vision, if you like, that's needed to develop understanding, in all its different aspects. And that's not just thinking. Of course, we can be awed by words to a certain extent, but words can be very powerful pointers to what the Dhamma is about if there are the seeds that have been sown. And if they're not sown, well, words can almost be superfluous because they're not being utilized in a wise way. And it's an easy hole to fall into, especially when we've talked ourselves into a bit of a corner about, posture or place, which just, the more that's considered carefully by the wise, they'll see that that doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. But people can be so easily captured. But I was just reminded what you were saying about consider, and I looked at that word recently and thought, wow, it's about really attempting to see the enormous complexity and panorama, if you like, that's needed, that panoramic view of the Dhamma, looking at from many different aspects, and its profundity, that we're able to appreciate more and more what the Dhamma represents, and not, again, as the Ajahn would always remind us, not forgetting that it relates to the present moment. There's no other time. The past is gone. It doesn't exist. It's just a fantasy. It's just a story, as been alluded to this morning, which we're continually good at concocting in the present, about going here. And I like Tana Ajahn's mention this morning about swimming. We often think, I see, or I swim, or I do this, or I do that. And so easily we get caught, I've got to do this, I'm going to make my lunch soon, and all those sort of things that we're always doing, and forgetting the Dhammas so easily because of our accumulated attachment. We're seduced into thinking about the Dhamma in unskillful ways, or thinking about what we think is happening conventionally, which is, obviously we have to use the conventional truths that we have concocted to enable us to navigate our world. However, which is what's called the sammati satya, the conventional world, and that's true to a point, obviously, but we forget the paramattha satya. And as the Ajahn has pointed out so often, is that it's only because of the paramattha satya, the ultimate realities that Tana Ajahn and others speak about, that enables us to have this conventional world. If it wasn't for those dhatus, ayatanas, and so on that we're familiar with, then there wouldn't be a conventional world. It wouldn't exist. And so often when I hear people talking about Dhamma, they completely overlook this aspect of Paramattha Dhamma. It's almost absurd that is not considered or talked about, because that's, as I read it increasingly, that is what the Dhamma is about. If there's not consideration of the realities as they truly are, then we'll forever be caught up in the world of sammati satya and forget about, or don't think it's important to consider the ultimate realities, the ones that the meaning, literally paramatta, the meaning beyond. Literally, that's what the word means, paramatta. Atta, of course, means meaning or truth or essence. And para means beyond, that which is beyond. It's not immediately accessible by those who have not developed understanding or had developed panya. Perhaps it's best to use the word panya there, because the word understanding in English can mean just, conventional idea. Anya has a completely different meaning and it relates to the present moment. Can't relate to any other time. You can't be wise about the future. Oh, well, you can think about it in different ways, which might be smart, a little bit wiser, but ultimately it can only be developed. It can only be developed in the present.
That's the more we sort of yes, absolutely. And I think the point is that we can talk about what happens around right, what we were just talking about. Can't even, sorry, I don't have the word, but what it really comes back to every time is the understanding now, what's happening now, what is arising now, and yeah, understanding of it and the conditions for it.
Totally, and that's where I think also it doesn't matter if in some measure, as Tanajan says, what words sometimes are being used. The words are not the important thing, it's what they point to. And I think it's so easy to be to have our understanding to misunderstand Dhamma if we don't appreciate the common denominator. What is it? What is the Dhamma pointing to? Why did the Buddha talk about Dhamma in so many varied ways? Of course, it's for all different accumulations that different people have. We can know that, but from each sutta, we can glean a little bit about what the Dhamma is all about. Some, as we know, some sutta are more comprehensive, like as we're familiar with Satipatthana Sutta, but even that can be misunderstood. Because if it was just about that sutta, and you often hear people talking about it in different ways, and the more I consider carefully what the Dhamma is about, and I think this has been spoken to recently, that you can even misunderstand that because it's you doing something again. Yeah,
there's no one. Yes, it's anatta. It's very hard to read anything that has been written in the texts and some of the suttas, and some of the commentaries, and particularly in some of the material that's in circulation today. If there's no understanding of not self, then the chances of understanding incorrectly are very high.
I totally, totally.
Anyway, look, I'm very conventional and not sort of not the depth of understanding is not there. These conventional expressions it often do not portray the reality of Dhamma and anatta, and they what was I going to say? And but the Dhamma, as explained in the Tipitaka, is everything that gets read or heard about the true Dhamma, right understanding lies behind it.
Totally, and I'm very conscious of time, but yeah, absolutely, totally. If that's not considered, but again, as we know, that can be misconstrued, and people can take themselves along a path that's not very helpful. But anyway, Tana Jamkap, perhaps you'd like to say a few words before we finish up. Thank you very much.
Yes, so true. For now, สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ